My name is Margaret. I am 75 years old, and today I sit in my old wooden chair, holding a cup of warm tea, talking to you from the small apartment I have lived in for most of my life. People look at me now, with my gray hair neatly tied back, my wrinkled hands resting on the arms of my chair, and they see only an old woman. But behind these tired eyes lives a story so shocking, so painful, that even I sometimes wonder how I managed to survive it. Yes, my son, the boy I carried in my womb for 9 long months, the child I raised with love and tears, the man I believed would never leave me, abandoned me in this very apartment for 10 whole years. 10 years of silence. 10 years without a single phone call, without a letter, without a knock on my door. 10 years where he never asked if I was alive or dead. Can you imagine that? A mother sitting alone day after day, waiting for footsteps that never came, listening to a ringing phone that never once carried her son's voice. I tell you this, and it breaks my heart all over again. The deepest cut in life is not from strangers, but from the ones you gave your heart to. But before I go too far, let me ask you, where are you watching from tonight? I ask because I want you to feel close to me. I want you to feel as if you are sitting right here in my living room, listening to my story, as if the warmth of my lamp and the smell of my tea surround you too. I want you to walk this journey with me because my story is not just about pain. It is about hope, kindness, and the lessons life teaches when we least expect them. I will tell you about the day my son walked away from me. That was the day my heart nearly stopped beating. I will never forget it. But first, let me take you back because you need to understand who I am, who my son is, and how we came to that moment. My name, as I said, is Margaret. I was born in a small town in Ohio, in a time when neighbors looked out for one another. My father was a carpenter who built furniture that lasted for generations. My mother was a kind woman who never turned away a hungry stranger. She taught me early that kindness was not weakness but strength. I grew up with those values and I carried them into my own family. I married young. His name was Richard. He was tall, charming, and for a time he made me laugh in ways no one else could. Together we had one child, a son named David. Oh, David was my sunshine. When I first held him in my arms, I whispered promises in his tiny ears. I promised him I would always love him, always protect him, always be there no matter what storms came our way. And for many years we were close, closer than most mothers and sons I knew. But life has a way of testing you. Richard, my husband, was not as strong as I thought. He left when David was still a teenager. One day he simply walked out, chasing another life, another woman, another dream. I was left alone to raise David. That day, I stood in the middle of our kitchen, holding the note Richard left behind, and I made myself a promise. I will give this boy everything his father could not. I will not let him feel abandoned. And so, I worked day and night. I cleaned houses, I washed clothes, I babysat other people's children. Also, my boy would never go hungry. Sometimes I would come home with my back aching so badly I thought I would collapse. But then I would see David sleeping peacefully, and I knew it was worth it. Every sacrifice, every tear. He was my reason for living. David grew into a smart young man. He was quick with numbers, and he had a smile that could melt anyone's heart. I was so proud of him. He was the kind of boy neighbors admired, teachers praised, and other parents wished they had. I dreamed that one day he would finish college, get a good job, and maybe even take care of me when I grew old. Isn't that what every parent hopes for? But dreams don't always come true the way we imagine. Something changed in David as he grew older. He became restless, distant. I would ask him, "Son, is everything all right?" And he would shrug, saying, "I'm fine, Mom." But I knew something was wrong. A mother always knows. He stopped coming home early. He stopped sharing stories about his day. And slowly, I began to feel the gap widening between us. Still, I never imagined he would one day leave me completely. The day it happened, I was sitting right here in this apartment. I had cooked his favorite meal, roast chicken with mashed potatoes and green beans. He walked in, looking tired, but instead of smiling at me the way he used to, he said something that froze my blood. "Mom," he said, not looking me in the eye, I think it's time I moved out. Don't wait up for me anymore." At first, I thought he meant he was going to live nearby, maybe just in another part of the city. So I said, "That's fine, sweetheart. I'll support you. Just promise me you'll come visit often." But he didn't answer. He picked up his bag, walked to the door, and for the first time in my life, he didn't look back. The sound of that door closing was louder than thunder in my ears. That was the last day I saw him. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. No phone calls. No letters. No visits. 10 years went by, and my only son never asked of me. Never even once. People came to my door sometimes. Neighbors, church friends, even the mailman, and they would ask, "Margaret, how's David? When is he coming by?" And each time I forced a smile and said, "Oh, he's busy, you know how young men are." But deep inside I was breaking. And then, one evening, just as I was beginning to accept that maybe I would die without ever seeing him again, something happened. Something so unexpected, so shocking that it left me trembling in my chair. There was a knock on my door. But it wasn't just any knock. It was slow, heavy, deliberate, like someone had been standing there a long time before deciding to knock. Froze, my heart racing. After 10 long years, could it be? Or was it someone else, bringing news I was not ready to hear? I sat frozen in my chair, staring at the door as though it were a living thing. The knock came again. 3 slow thuds, heavy, dragging through the air like the heartbeat of someone standing in the shadows. For a moment I thought I had imagined it. 10 years of waiting, 10 years of silence. Maybe my mind was finally playing tricks on me. But then the sound came again, this time firmer, almost impatient. My teacup rattled as I set it down on the table. My hands trembled as I pushed myself up from the chair. My legs were weak, but my curiosity and fear carried me across the room. I placed my hand on the doorknob and whispered a prayer. "Lord, let it be him. Let it be my boy. Or if not, give me strength to face whatever is on the other side." I opened the door slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. But it wasn't David. Standing in the hallway was a young man I had never seen before. He couldn't have been older than 20. His clothes were worn, his shoes scuffed, and his face looked tired, as if life had already dealt him too many blows. "Are you Mrs. Margaret?" he asked in a soft, unsure voice. "Yes," I replied, my disappointment hidden behind forced calm. "And you are?" "My name is Michael," he said, shifting uncomfortably. I'm sorry to disturb you, ma'am, but I had nowhere else to go." I blinked. Nowhere else to go. Why me? He looked down at his hands, then back up at me. "Because I think you knew my mother. She used to talk about you." I stared at him, trying to place his face. And then it hit me. His mother had been Angela, a woman who lived down the street many years ago. She had been kind but troubled, always struggling to make ends meet. She had died young, leaving behind a little boy. And that little boy was now standing at my door. A wave of pity washed over me. Though my own son had abandoned me, here was another mother's son, alone, lost, and in need of kindness. My heart softened. "Come in," I said gently, opening the door wider. "It's cold out there." He stepped inside, glancing around my small apartment as if it were a palace. I led him to the kitchen, where I still had leftover chicken soup from the day before. I warmed it up, placed the steaming bowl in front of him, and watched as he devoured it hungrily. "Thank you," he said between bites. "You don't know what this means to me." I smiled sadly. I know what it means to be hungry. And I know what it means to feel alone. For the next hour we talked. He told me about his struggles, how he had bounced from one foster home to another, how he had dropped out of school, how he had been sleeping on park benches. As I listened, my heart broke for him. Here was a boy craving love, the same love I longed to give my own son. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt a sense of purpose again. But just as I began to feel hope stirring in my chest, something happened that shook me to my core. Michael reached into his worn backpack and pulled out a folded envelope. He placed it on the table, sliding it slowly toward me. This was given to me years ago, he said hesitantly. I wasn't supposed to open it until I found you. I frowned, staring at the envelope. My name was written across the front in handwriting I knew too well. My knees went weak. My breath caught in my throat. It was David's handwriting. I looked up at Michael, my lips trembling. Where did you get this? His eyes shifted nervously. From someone who knew him. They said one day I'd understand everything if I gave this to you. My heart raced. My son. After 10 years, my son's words were in my hands. But why through a stranger? Why not from him directly? With shaking fingers, I tore the envelope open. Inside was a single piece of paper. My eyes scanned the first few lines, and what I read made the room spin around me. The paper shook in my hands as my eyes darted across the words. The handwriting was unmistakably David's. Sharp letters, always leaning a little too far to the right, as though his thoughts were rushing ahead of his pen. I swallowed hard and began to read. Dear Mom, if you are reading this, then I have failed you. I wanted to protect you, but I couldn't. I had no choice but to leave. Please forgive me. One day you'll understand why I disappeared. Just know this. I never stopped loving you. David. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. My son, my David, had written to me, and the words carried pain I could not fully understand. What did he mean by protect you? Protect me from what? And why say he had no choice? The room suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. For 10 years I had lived with the bitter thought that my son abandoned me out of selfishness, that he simply didn't care. But this letter suggested something darker, something hidden. Where did you get this? I demanded, my voice trembling. Michael shifted in his chair. I told you. Someone gave it to me years ago. Man I barely knew. He found me on the street when I was younger. He said, one day you'll meet a woman named Margaret. Give her this. I didn't even know who you were until I remembered my mom once mentioning a kind woman down the street. I put the pieces together when I saw your name on the mailbox. I sat back slowly, my mind racing. What man? Why choose Michael as the messenger? None of it made sense. But then I looked at the boy again. His tired face, his hopeful eyes. And I realized he was now a part of this story, whether I wanted it or not. My son's mystery was tied somehow to this stranger. I pressed the letter against my chest, tears stinging my eyes. Michael, thank you. You don't know what this means to me. He nodded, his expression soft. I didn't come here looking for food, ma'am. Came because I felt I was supposed to. Like it was meant to happen. Those words struck me deeply. Sometimes in life, people cross your path for reasons you don't see at first. Maybe Michael wasn't here just by chance. Maybe he was here to help me uncover the truth about my son. The next few days passed more quietly. Michael stayed with me for a while, sleeping on the old couch in my living room. I cooked for him, and he helped me carry groceries and fix little things in the apartment. The loneliness I had carried for so long seemed to lift, even if only slightly. For the first time in 10 years, laughter returned to these walls. But the letter weighed heavy on my mind. Every night I read it again, searching for meaning between the lines. Protect me from what? What secret had stolen my son away from me for a decade? I decided to start asking questions. One afternoon, I visited Mrs. Thompson, my old neighbor from down the hall. She was now 82 but sharp as ever. Over tea I showed her the letter. She studied it carefully, her brows furrowing. Margaret, she said slowly, I don't want to frighten you, but I remember something strange about the night David left. I saw a black car parked outside your building. 2 men were sitting inside. They stayed there for hours, watching. A chill ran down my spine. Why didn't you ever tell me this? She sighed. I thought maybe they were his friends. I didn't want to meddle. But now I think maybe David was involved in something he didn't want you to know. Her words sent shivers through me. My David. In trouble. The boy I raised with honesty and kindness. Could it be possible? I walked home with a heavy heart. That night, I sat in the living room with Michael, staring at the letter on the table. I whispered aloud, "David, what have you gotten yourself into?" Michael looked at me carefully, as though debating whether to say something. Finally he spoke. "Mrs. Margaret," he said quietly, "I didn't tell you everything. That man who gave me the letter. He said if you ever opened it, I should also give you this." He reached into his backpack again. My stomach twisted as he pulled out a small black notebook, worn and frayed around the edges. He set it on the table in front of me. "This belonged to your son," Michael said. My breath caught. My son's notebook. I reached for it slowly, my fingers trembling as I touched the cover. I hesitated, afraid of what secrets it might hold. And then, just as I opened it, a slip of paper fell out. I picked it up, and froze when I saw what was written. It was a name I recognized instantly. And it was someone I never expected to be connected to my son. The paper trembled between my fingers as my eyes locked onto the name written in hurried ink. Richard. My husband. The man who had walked out on me decades ago, leaving me to raise David alone. I felt my whole body go cold. What on earth did Richard have to do with this? He was supposed to be gone, out of our lives forever. Yet here was his name, scrawled by my son in his own private notebook. Michael leaned forward, his brows knitted. "You know this person." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Yes, I know him. Richard was my husband, David's father. But he left us when David was just a boy. I haven't seen him in more than 30 years. Michael frowned. "Then why would his name be here? Why would your son write it down like this?" I stared at the name again, my mind racing back to memories I had buried deep. Richard had been charming once, yes, but also reckless. He had a taste for gambling and quick money. I used to beg him to stop, to think of his family, but he never listened. And then one day he was gone, leaving only a note that said, "I can't do this anymore." Could it be possible that after all these years, Richard had somehow returned into David's life? I pressed a hand against my forehead, fighting back tears. If Richard is involved, then maybe David left because of him. Maybe he thought staying would put me in danger. Michael nodded slowly. That could explain the line in the letter. "I wanted to protect you." The thought made my stomach twist. Had Richard dragged David into something dangerous? Had my son been caught in a web spun by the very man who abandoned us both? For days, I couldn't shake the questions. I would sit by the window, staring out at the street, replaying the past over and over. I remembered the last time I saw Richard. His smile too wide, his eyes hiding secrets, his hands always in his pockets as if he were concealing more than just coins. And then I thought of David as a boy, holding my hand at the market, asking, "Mom, will Dad ever come back?" How could I have known then that one day his father's name would resurface in such a haunting way? But even as the confusion tore at me, I felt something else stirring inside. A strength I hadn't felt in years. I had been silent too long, living like a shadow in this apartment. Now with this notebook I had a trail to follow. And I knew one thing. If Richard was connected to David's disappearance, I had to find out why. One evening after dinner, I opened the notebook again. Most of the pages were filled with scattered notes, numbers, and addresses that meant nothing to me. But toward the back, I found something that made my blood run cold. There was a sketch of a symbol, 2 interlocking circles with a line slashing through them. And beneath it, David had written one chilling word. Danger. My breath caught. I turned to Michael. "Do you recognize this symbol?" His eyes widened. Slowly he nodded. "Yes, I've seen it before. On the jackets of some men who hang around the old warehouse by the river. They're not the kind of people you want to meet, Mrs. Margaret." A heavy silence filled the room. My son's disappearance, his father's name, this strange symbol, it was all connected. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. If Richard was mixed up with those men, and if David had been caught in the middle, Then my son might not have left me because he wanted to. He might have been forced. I gripped the notebook tight, my heart pounding. "Michael," I whispered, "we have to go to that warehouse." He looked at me in shock. "Mrs. Margaret, it's dangerous. Those men don't play games. If your son got tangled with them, we could be walking into serious trouble." I leaned closer, my eyes fierce despite my trembling hands. "I've lived in silence for 10 years. 10 years thinking my son abandoned me. I need answers, even if it means walking straight into danger." Michael hesitated, then finally nodded. "All right. But if we're doing this, we'll have to be careful." We sat in silence, the ticking clock filling the room. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I was 75 years old, fragile, worn, but for the first time in a decade, I felt alive with purpose. And then, just as I was about to close the notebook, there was a sudden crash outside the apartment window. Michael jumped to his feet. I froze, my heart hammering. We rushed to the window, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Black car, parked across the street. And inside, 2 shadowy figures watching my building. My hands gripped the edge of the curtain so tightly I thought the fabric might tear. Across the street, the black car sat like a silent predator, its headlights off, its windows dark. But I knew, I knew there were eyes watching from inside. Michael stood beside me, his body tense. "That's the same kind of car I told you about, Mrs. Margaret. The one I used to see near the warehouse." My knees weakened, and I sank into my chair, staring at the notebook on the table. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit, though the picture they painted terrified me. My son, my husband, dangerous men. And now, after 10 years of silence, a black car outside my home. Michael pulled the curtain shut quickly. "Don't let them see you looking. We need to stay calm." "Calm," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Michael, they're outside my building. Watching. What if they're here for me? What if they know I have this notebook?" He pressed his lips together, thinking hard. "Maybe they've been watching you for longer than you realize. Maybe tonight they just wanted you to know they're there." The words chilled me. Had I been living under their gaze all this time, blind to it? Or had my son's letter and notebook stirred a hornet's nest I was never supposed to touch? The hours crept by slowly. We left the lights off, sitting in the dim glow of a single lamp, speaking in hushed voices as though the car could hear us. At some point, exhaustion pulled me into a restless sleep in my chair. When I woke the next morning, the car was gone. But the fear lingered in the room like smoke. For the next few days, Michael and I tried to go on as normal. I cooked, he ran errands, and we both avoided talking too much about the car. But every time I looked out the window, I half expected to see it waiting again. And still, the notebook burned in my mind. I read it page by page, looking for clues. Most of it made no sense. Numbers, times, half sentences, but every so often a detail leapt out. Date, street name. A word circled twice. One word kept repeating, harbor. Michael leaned over my shoulder as I traced it with my finger. "That's down by the docks, close to where the warehouse is." I nodded slowly. "Then that's where the answers are." He frowned. "Mrs. Margaret, I don't think you understand what you're asking for. Those docks aren't safe. People disappear down there. If your son was involved, it wasn't by choice. And if we go sniffing around..." I raised a hand, cutting him off. "Michael, I've lived in fear for 10 years without knowing why. I can't sit in this apartment forever. If my son is out there, or if he suffered because of them, then I need to face the truth, even if it hurts." Michael looked at me a long time, then sighed heavily. "All right, but I'm not letting you go alone. We'll find a way. Just promise me you'll be careful." I gave him a small, sad smile. At my age, careful is the only way I move. The next few days were quieter. I found myself thinking about kindness, about how even in the darkest times, small acts of care can keep a person alive. Michael had reminded me of that. Though he was not my son, he showed me the compassion I longed for. And in return, I gave him what little I could, food, warmth, a roof. Life has a strange way of bringing strangers together when we need each other most. But peace never lasts long in stories like mine. One evening, just as I was settling in with my tea, there came another knock at the door. This time it wasn't slow or hesitant. It was sharp, hard, angry. Michael froze where he stood, his eyes wide. I set my cup down, my hand trembling. The knock came again, louder. Whoever was on the other side wasn't going to wait. Michael whispered, "Don't answer it." But before I could respond, the door handle rattled violently. And then, with a sudden crack, the door burst open. Two men in black jackets stormed into my apartment. The door slammed against the wall with a deafening crack. My heart nearly stopped as two large men in black jackets filled the doorway. Their faces were hard, their eyes cold, and the symbol from David's notebook, the two circles with a line slashed through, was stitched into the fabric on their sleeves. Michael jumped in front of me. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice trembling but brave. The taller man sneered. "Relax, kid. We're not here for you. We're here for her." His eyes shifted toward me, sharp and calculating. I clutched the notebook to my chest, my voice shaking. "What do you want from me? I'm just an old woman." The shorter man stepped forward, his voice low and threatening. "You have something that doesn't belong to you. Hand it over, and no one gets hurt." Michael tensed, ready to fight if he had to, but I raised a trembling hand. I was 75 years old, but I had lived too long to let fear alone guide me. "This belonged to my son," I said firmly. "If you know where he is, tell me now." The men exchanged a glance, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of hesitation in their eyes. Finally, the taller man spoke. "Your son. David, he was one of us. He got in too deep. We gave him jobs and he was good at them. But then he changed. He wanted out. He tried to expose us." My knees buckled. Michael grabbed my arm to steady me. The man continued. "We couldn't let that happen. So we gave him a choice, disappear or pay the price. He chose to disappear. That notebook. It's evidence he gathered against us. If it falls into the wrong hands, it'll ruin everything." Tears blurred my vision. My son hadn't abandoned me. He had sacrificed his life in silence, hiding from these men to protect me. The words in his letter echoed in my mind. "I wanted to protect you." Michael's voice broke the silence. "Where is he now?" The shorter man smirked. "Dead. That's what happens to traitors." My body went cold, my heart shattering all over again. But something in my spirit refused to believe it. A mother knows when her child's soul is gone from the world, and I hadn't felt that final emptiness. I lifted my chin, my voice trembling but steady. "No, he's not dead. If he were, I would know. You can lie all you want, but a mother's heart never lies." The men growled in frustration. "Enough. Hand over the notebook." I tightened my grip. For 10 years I had lived in silence. For 10 years I had let sorrow eat me alive. Not tonight. Not in my own home. With trembling hands I held the notebook up. "You want it," said. "Then here." And before they could move, I hurled it into the fireplace. Flames roared, swallowing the pages, turning secrets into ash. The men shouted in rage, lunging toward the fire, but it was too late. The evidence was gone. Michael grabbed my hand and pulled me behind him. "You need to leave," he told the men. "It's over." The taller man glared at me, his fists clenched. For a tense moment I thought they might strike. But finally, with a curse under his breath, he yanked the shorter man toward the door. "This isn't the end, old woman," he spat. "If your son's still alive, he's smart enough to stay hidden. And you better stay quiet." The door slammed behind them, leaving silence and smoke in their wake. I sank into my chair, tears streaming down my face. My chest ached with grief, but also with something new, relief. The burden I had carried for 10 years, the endless question of why my son had left me, finally had an answer. David hadn't abandoned me. He had saved me. Michael knelt beside me, his hand on mine. "You were brave, Mrs. Margaret. Braver than anyone I know." I looked at him through blurry eyes. "No, Michael. I was just a mother. And mothers will always fight for their children, even when the world thinks they're gone." The days that followed were quieter. The men never returned, and though I still looked over my shoulder, I felt a strange peace. The truth had hurt, yes, but it had also healed something inside me. I no longer blamed myself. I no longer believed I was unloved. And as for Michael, he stayed. He became like a son to me, filling the silence with laughter and hope. Perhaps life had taken David from me, but it had given me another chance at love and family through this boy who knocked on my door. Sometimes when I sit by the window at night, I whisper into the darkness, "David, if you're out there, I forgive you. Understand now. And I'm proud of you." And in the quiet, I almost feel him near, watching, protecting, loving me still. For 10 years, I believed I was abandoned. But the truth is, I was never truly alone.